Old Bishopsbourne. Old Bishopsbourne is a heritage-listed house at 233 Milton Road, Milton, City of Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. It was designed by Benjamin Backhouse and built from 1865 to 1959. It is also known as St. Francis Theological College and Bishopsbourne. It was added to the Queensland Heritage Register on 21 October 1992. History. This two-storied stone residence was constructed in 1865–68 for Edward Tufnell, the first Anglican bishop of Brisbane 1860–74, as his see house. It remained the home of the Anglican primates of Brisbane until 1964. In 1862 Tufnell, on behalf of the Anglican Church, received from Emmeline Leslie a gift of 16 acres 6.5 ha of eucalypt woodland along the Milton Road. The site was earmarked for a see house. During a short sojourn in England, Tufnell raised £4,400 for the Brisbane diocese. Despite popular opposition to the expense, £3,000 of this was spent constructing Bishopsbourne. The architect was Benjamin Backhouse, who had practiced in Geelong, Ballarat, and London before arriving in Brisbane in 1861. Backhouse left Brisbane for Sydney in 1868, but in the short time he was resident in Queensland, his work was prolific, ranging from houses to churches to school to hotels to commercial and warehouse premises. Among these works were a number of substantial Brisbane residences, such as Sintra House at Bowen Hills in 1863–64, Fernburg at Barden C. 1865, Veruna at Rosali in 1866, and several ecclesiastic buildings, including the first All Saints Anglican Church on Wickham Terrace, erected in 1861–62, St. Stephen's School and Convent in 1862, St. Mary's Convent at Ipswich in 1863–63, the second St. Stephen's Cathedral, commenced in 1863–64, the first St. Mary's Catholic Church at Warwick, erected 1863–65. In the mid–1860s, he designed national schools at Toowoomba, Warwick, Condamine, Laidley, Goondiwindi, Nanango, Bald Hills, Bowen, Maryborough, and Fortitude Valley for the Queensland Board of Education. He also designed the first Brisbane Grammar School in Roma Street, constructed 1868–69. During construction of the residence, much of the indigenous woodland was cleared. Remnants of survive, but most of the eucalypts are secondary growth. Garden beds for flowers, vegetables, and fruit were established in the 1870s. Hoop and bunya pines, staghorns, and elkhorns were introduced at this period as well. Pencil pines were planted after 1912. In the 1870s, porphyry and sandstone gateposts were erected on Milton Road, defining the entrance to the carriage approach to the see house. A timber chapel designed by Diocesan architect Richard George Suter was constructed in the grounds c. 1870, but was replaced in 1912 by the current stone building Old Bishopsbourne Chapel. In 1886, Brisbane architects Banks and Carandini designed a two-storied brick and stone kitchen/service wing to replace an earlier wooden structure. During the 1930s, a number of significant changes were made to the grounds of Bishopsbourne. Land fronting Milton and Barroner Roads and Husler Terrace was subdivided and sold, reducing the area to 12 acres 4.9 ha. Stone terraces along the eastern and western slopes were constructed, using relief labor. These were planted with shrubs, annuals, and a bougainvillea hedge, but have been largely grassed over since. In 1936, St. Francis Theological College was transferred from Nunda to the grounds of Bishopsbourne, where a wooden dormitory and classroom building was constructed. Two brick and concrete structures were erected for the college in 1959, one being the vice principal's residence and the other an award-winning library. Some restoration work at Bishopsbourne was undertaken in 1962, particularly of the cedar joinery. However, in 1964 Archbishop Philip Strong moved to Eldernell, formerly Farsley at 39 Eldernell Terrace, Hamilton, which became the new Bishopsbourne, and the former See House at Milton became part of St. Francis Theological College. The 1860s core was refurbished as the principal's residence, and the 1880s service wing was converted into quarters for the vice principal. During the 1980s, pressure for increased student accommodation resulted in the construction of a number of two-storied, brick, semi-detached townhouses in the grounds of St. Francis Theological College. A new timber administration building and a set of timber townhouses were constructed in the early 1990s. In April 2007, Archbishop Philip Aspinall sold the Hamilton Bishopsbourne for $11.02 million and moved to a residence in Escott costing $2.06 million, which has also been renamed Bishopsbourne. Description: Old Bishopsbourne is a large, two-storied residence constructed of local porphyry and sandstone. The style is a blend of derived and vernacular elements. On both floors, French casement windows with fanlights open from the main rooms onto wide verandas, which are enclosed externally by Gothic stone arches, creating a cloistered atmosphere. The second-story veranda balustrade is constructed of cast iron fashioned in an inverted arch pattern. The hipped roof is slated with 4 tall chimney stacks. Small louvred gablets ventilate the roof. Internally, the sandstock brickwork is cement rendered and lime plastered, with little ornamentation. All the internal joinery, including 10-foot 3.0 m high folding doors which retract into the walls, is of Queensland red cedar. The ground floor comprises a small vestibule separated by a cedar and etched glass screen from a broad hallway running the length of the house. 3 rooms to the right used for drawing room and study functions, 3 rooms to the left which open to one large dining area, an enclosed section of the front veranda which now contains a bathroom, and a modern kitchen at the The upstairs has been converted into the principal's quarters, containing 6 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a lounge, and a kitchen. A 2-storied brick and stone annex with a corrugated iron roof, formerly the service wing, is attached at the rear. The iron balustrade pattern of the main building is repeated around the annex verandas, the lower level of which incorporates a deep timber valance. Underneath both the main building and the annex are large cellars, intended originally as larders and storage space. While an ongoing building program has resulted in substantial changes to the site, sufficient grounds and mature trees remain to sustain the garden setting ambience, and the residence itself remains largely intact. The 1870s gateposts survive, but only fragments of the early garden beds. The 1930 stone terracing survives. Other significant buildings within the grounds include Old Bishopsbourne Chapel 1912, a Gothic-style, gable-roofed stone building. The 1936 St. Francis Theological College building, a gable-roofed and verandaed, interwar hostel-type timber building. St. Francis Theological College Library Building 1959, a post-war international-style brick, concrete and glass structure with ecclesiastical undertones. The endeavors by successive architects to incorporate gable and arch motifs within their contemporary designs has created a sense of harmony within the grounds. Heritage listing. Old Bishopsbourne was listed on the Queensland Heritage Register on 21 October 1992, having satisfied the following criteria. The place is important in demonstrating the evolution or pattern of Queensland's history. Old Bishopsbourne St. Francis Theological College and its substantial grounds, which include early garden fragments, early gateposts, a 1912 Robin Dodds designed stone chapel, 1930s terracing, and a number of buildings associated with St. Francis Theological College from 1936, is significant historically as one of the oldest ecclesiastical. Old Bishopsbourne, a purpose-designed See House constructed 1865–68, is significant historically for its strong association with the mid-19th century consolidation of the Anglican Church in Queensland and with the Anglican bishops and archbishops of Brisbane for nearly a century. The place is important in demonstrating the principal characteristics of a particular class of cultural places. Old Bishopsbourne is an accomplished and aesthetically appealing building with a simplicity of design and austerity of decoration which reflect its function and purpose as an ecclesiastical residence. It is important as a major work by prominent architect Benjamin Backhouse and one of the more intact of his surviving Brisbane works. The 1936 Theological College accommodation and lecture room building is a good example of interwar hostel type accommodation, and the award-winning 1959 College Library building is a fine example of international style in Brisbane. The place is important because of its aesthetic significance. Old Bishopsbourne is a Milton landmark, still visible in the western vista from Petrie Terrace. The place is important in demonstrating a high degree of creative or technical achievement at a particular period. The 1936 Theological College accommodation and lecture room building is a good example of interwar hostel type accommodation, and the award-winning 1959 College Library building is a fine example of international style in Brisbane. The place has a special association with the life or work of a particular person, group, or organization of importance in Queensland's history. The place has had a strong association with the work of the Anglican Church in Queensland for over 130 years, and each of the buildings in the grounds illustrates further consolidation of the Anglican Church in this state.